Welcome to our podcast again, and our podcast People Just Like Us, where we talk with people just like us. Again, if you are interested in being part of our podcast, then do get in touch with us. We would love to have you here and have you chatting with us. I'll give you details again. I'll try and remember to at the end of this as well. If you are eagle-eyed, you'll know that we're in another set again this week. So we just keep moving around rooms so we find one that we like and one that the set works in for us. And so we hope you enjoy this. Today, I'm really delighted. Today we have got Nikki with us. Nikki is from an organisation called Homestart. She'll tell you a bit about that in a minute, and we've been doing some work with Homestart. Healing for the Heart has anyway over the last wee while. We've been enjoying getting to know one another and getting to know one another's organisations. So you are so welcome here. It's really good to have you.
Thank you.
We've been trying to get this set up for the last few weeks, and we finally managed to land on a date that suited
Absolutely.
you and that suited me. So why don't you tell us a wee bit about yourself and how you came to be doing what you're doing just now?
Thank you. Thank you for having me along here today. So I am Nikki O'Hara, the Director of Homestart Glasgow North and North Lanarkshire. We're a two-site project. How did I get into working for Homestart? So I won't go back too far, but I guess my background was originally in interior design. And having done that for a while, I realised that actually I was far more inclined to want to work directly with people. I worked in Easter House doing some promotional artwork for them, went into homelessness, went into befriending, and whilst I was befriending, I was working primarily with young boys. I worked for an organisation called COVID Befriending, and I provided support to boys between the ages of 14 and 18, boys that were not in education, employment or training. And I realised at that point that I'm not saying it's never too late, but it felt like it was a little too late. And I was just really keen to get in and work in early years. So I'm going to say I made the slightly strategic move of joining the board of Homestart Glasgow South, where I was a board member for about 7 years. And then following that, I was very successful in getting the manager's job at Homestart Glasgow North. So that was about, I think 7 or 8 years ago.
Wow.
So I've been there ever since.
I just love it when I get to talk to people that I think I know, and then they tell me they've been into interior design, and it's like, wow, amazing.
Yeah, I know.
You're the person to know then when you move into a space like this.
Oh, I don't know. People say that all the time, and then I feel totally under pressure to, I don't know, they're like, oh, come round to my house and you can help me. And I'm like, oh, no, it doesn't. I say interior design, so kind of the work that I was doing was butchers, bakers, delicatessens and pharmacies.
Right, okay.
So maybe that gets me out of us.
So what's rattling through my head is, what's the colour scheme in here, and are we matching? And are you offended by that? So
I'm going to say that the nice thing about Homestart is Homestart's got a kind of very defined branding. I always sort of describe the palette of colours as Mediterranean colours, so you've probably seen it's like really bright pink, bright orange, bright blue, so it's quite a nice lot of colours to work with. Although in saying that, we have actually just painted our offices white, and they were pink, so they're painted white, but we look to kind of do some nice artwork on the walls. So yeah.
Excellent. So you have your paintbrush out then?
Well, we'll see. Well, we've connected with a really fantastic artist actually. Our offices are in Maryhill, and we've partnered with a really fantastic artist who is visibly impaired, Jo Sunshine, and she's done some really brilliant artwork for us, so we're really excited to get her artwork on our walls.
Fabulous. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a bit about Homestart, because I'm not sure that everybody who's listening or watching to this will know what Homestart is or what you do or anything else.
Okay, so Homestart UK is based in Leicester, and I suppose it's a bit like a franchise. So there's 182, I think, Homestarts across the UK. Wow. It is, I'm going to say it's actually international. It is in 12 different countries, but in the main, our network is 180 Homestarts, and they are set up in communities, for communities. So Homestart Glasgow North, it was Homestart Glasgow North West, because it covered the northwest of Glasgow. It then became Homestart Glasgow North, and now we've expanded into North Lanarkshire, areas of North Lanarkshire. So what Homestart does is I suppose the kind of tagline is, we provide practical and emotional support to families with children under the age of 5. So basically, people get referred from all walks of life with all different issues, challenges, because I'm going to say we all know being a parent isn't easy. So basically people get referred in the main through social work, education, health visitors. We get a lot of self-referrals, and it's basically just people that are finding parenting difficult, the struggles that, I'm going to say we all encounter at some point, but I guess it's not just one issue that's going on. So quite often it could be isolation, bereavement, multiple births, addictions, really anything that's kind of compounding your life as a parent. So as I say, they get referred through services or self-referrals. And then our core work is that we match families up with volunteers. So I'm going to say volunteers, everyday volunteers we call them. They're just people like you and I, people who have a passion for supporting families. And people come to volunteer with us for all different reasons, whether it's to pay something back because they've got a bit of time in their hands, maybe their families have left home and they feel they've got something to give. So our core support is home visiting volunteers, and then we also offer other services. So we do groups, we do some stuff in schools, we offer some counselling, thanks to Healing for the Heart. So we've got quite a portfolio of supports available.
Fabulous. And just picking up on the volunteering thing, if folks are watching this or listening to it and want to volunteer with Homestart or are interested, they can obviously get in touch with you.
Absolutely. I'm going to say we never have enough volunteers, ever. We're always looking for volunteers. I'm going to say 18 to 80, we welcome people and we provide really comprehensive training. It's around, I think, 26 to 30 hours. And I mean, of course, there is a vetting process, but people go through training, and if they want to support families and we want them to join our team, then we match people up. So it's a great opportunity for people who, as I say, either want to give something back, but also quite often people use it as a stepping stone if they want a career change or if they want to go into further education. I'm going to say the biggest shout out has got to be that we are always looking for men, and we've got a real lack of men that come forward. So if, let's say, we have around 60 volunteers, I think we've got 2 men, and we do know that there's lots of dads that are looking for support. So yeah, absolutely, if there's any men out there that are looking for some great volunteering experiences, certainly give us a shout. So it's info@homestartglasgownorth.org.uk.
And we'll try and put that in the wee blurb at the bottom of the podcast so that people can see it.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Amazing. Obviously, so we are an organisation that's all about mental health and wellbeing. So what are you seeing, maybe even coming out of the pandemic, because clearly that's what we are all saying we're doing. What have you seen the impact in terms of mental health and wellbeing? What have you seen that impact has been, over the last couple of years in particular?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question obviously that's been talked about, a lot at this point. I mean, a lot of the families that we support, to be honest, were lonely and isolated before the pandemic. A lot of single parents, we work a lot with asylum seekers and refugees. So, isolation and loneliness impacts those families always, not just in the pandemic. So the pandemic, of course, made that a lot worse for many, many more families. In particular, I think we noticed it for new parents, first-time parents who were, bringing new babies into the world. It was really, really challenging because there was a complete lack of support for them. They were very isolated, whether that was around, parents not, grandparents not being able to visit, about going to hospitals and not been having partners to be able to support them. So we noticed the impact on parents, but we also really noticed the impact of mental health on infants, children, the kind of social isolation that's been caused over the last couple of years, affecting their behaviour, their confidence. So it's a whole family. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a whole family impact, which is pretty devastating.
Yep, and I suppose that becomes a bit of a vicious circle then as well, yeah. Because if parents are stressed, then that impacts their child. Yeah. And then the child's behaviour then impacts the parents, and you just go round in that circle.
And it is, I suppose when we look at the reason for referral, more often than not, it's around kind of self-confidence, self-worth, And that's a real problem. Actually for some parents, getting over the doorstep is a massive issue. And as you say, the problem we then have is people have, in this last 2 years have not been going out. It's impacting their children. We need, and families need to be able to get out their houses to go to mother and toddler groups. And we all know that when you've, particularly with, your first baby, it's quite overwhelming having a new baby. It's overwhelming going to a mother and toddler group at the best of times. But actually, if you've got significant trauma in your life, you're lacking confidence, the thought of going to, a big mother and toddler group is really challenging. So what we're trying to do to address that is that we put the volunteer in, and it's a kind of hand-in-hand, side-by-side approach, so that the volunteer kind of works with the family, builds up trust, builds up a relationship, tries, gently to get people out of their homes and into so some of our very small supported groups where mums can interact with other parents, peer-to-peer support, but also children can engage with other children, which is so important, as we all know.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm assuming that, maybe wrongly so, but assuming that even in terms of that access at the moment, the whole cost of living crisis and all the rest of it, that's a huge impact too, because you might have a toddler group, but you might need to get a bus to get to the toddler group, and can you afford the bus fare or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, finances are, poverty again is a kind of overarching referral category or criteria that we work with. But, our service is available to everyone. It's not just about poverty. So we work with a kind of a wide range of, as I say, challenges. But certainly financially, it is really, really challenging and difficult for families. The worry that it creates, is terrible.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I say, we work with a lot of asylum seekers and refugees where financially things are, from day one, a real struggle being in this country. So certainly where possible, we can try and help with, whether it's the cost of travel, of, coming to our groups. And it certainly helps. And we know that, actually for some families where we might give a bus ticket for the day, so £4.60 for the bus ticket, families are delighted to come along to our group, but they actually use that ticket all day. So what they do is they cram in, they do their shopping, they go to the Home Office, and that's the least that we can do. So it's really challenging for families right now.
Yep, and I suppose providing that holistic care as well for folks. So it sounds to me as if Homestar's not an organisation that's just kind of tunnel visioned into one thing. It's actually about support for the whole family in a holistic sort of a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very much a kind of, we kind of talk about a wraparound service, so it is a kind of whole family approach. I was just saying earlier, we've just employed a new dad worker. We had a dad's worker, we've now got a new one, Dad Matters UK. So it's kind of, I say, it's a model of support. So it's working really with dads, kind of conception up to age 2. But yeah, it is about whole families and extended families and kinship carers and grandparents. So it's really, it's about enabling families to be the absolute best they can be, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, fabulous. And it's something that is so needed. And it's not, because the need is not always for clinical care or clinical support, like the kind of stuff that we obviously partner with you to offer and when it's appropriate, but actually just that human connection with the people. I've often thought of as there's been a change in how families operate and the culture that we have in this country in terms of families, I've often thought about having grannies somewhere that you could actually send in that would go in and say to a new mum, a first time mum, it's okay, it's absolutely fine, because you can get just so stressed about all of that stuff.
That in a way it does feel a bit like that is what our service is. I mean, obviously there's kind of, a spectrum of
and much
need.
More to it than that.
So, for some people it actually is just like the granny figure going in and providing that practical and emotional support. sitting down, having a cup of tea, talking about how do you manage your washing basket, but then there obviously are far more kind of comprehensive families where there's significant need, there's there's a lot of trauma in and around the household, there's child protection issues, but we are people talk about the magic of Homestart and the magic of volunteering. How do we do the matches? Well, there isn't a magic, funnily enough. I guess it's really just down to experience and expertise about matching, and it's very much about, we get to know our volunteers in that 30 hours of training, and we get to know our families through the assessment, and we magically connect them together. And of course, occasionally there's a match that doesn't work out, but in the main it's about, people helping people. It is very much about peer support. It is about that, where for many, sadly, there's many people who don't have family support. They don't have family locally, whether that's asylum seekers or, because of bereavement. We can provide that service, which is great.
Just phenomenal. There's just not anything, there's no substitute for it.
Absolutely not. And also just saying about that kind of complementary. So I think, with a lot of the families that we work with, there is a clinical, need, but there is something about us complementing. So yes, whether people are getting clinical support, but they actually just want that human connection. And that's what we can provide.
Yeah, which is fabulous. So, and you've touched on the magic already, but the question that we always ask our podcast guests is, if we could give you a magic wand that you could wave, that you could change. Now you can only change one thing, okay? So it's only one, not three wishes, you just got
goodness.
One. So if you had a magic wand that you could wave that could change one thing that would make a significant difference to the lives of families with children under 2, then what would it be? What would you change?
Oh my goodness. I'm thinking, and just one magic wand. I mean, you would always say for people to be, happy and healthy. And I think, we look at our staff team, we look at our volunteers, we look at our families. And I think it is about there being appropriate supports for people around their mental health. Because we know that when we go into families, when we're trying to connect and support families, if their mental health has been really challenged, it's very difficult for us to connect. So really for there to be services available to help and support people's mental health. And I guess the thing about that is that there's sustainable funding for organisations like yourselves and like ours to know that it's not just a quick fix. You can't have a quick fix for people's mental health. It needs to be something that's there now and tomorrow and the next day. So it's about sustainability of funding, and we know currently that is difficult. But I guess if there's any funders watching, it's don't give us 1 year funding. Ideally, make it 3 years.
That's right. Yeah, and then have there be some way where we can have a conversation about what that looks like beyond the 3 years, if it's impactful, if it's making that kind of impact. You're preaching to the choir.
I know.
So it's like, and I suppose though this goes out all over the place. So there'll be lots of people who'll listen to this or who'll watch this who actually don't know that that's what happens in charities within the UK. That there's time limited funding, and often that funding is for a project.
Yeah.
And so when you get that project going and it's going really well, then how do you fund it beyond that? Because it's then not a new project, So,
and I think the thing that we know now, you know this and I know this, is that right now, because of the pandemic, although it was around before the pandemic, is that mental health services are absolutely saturated, statutory services are saturated, and we can't do anything about that, but we're available to pick up the bits that are not getting the services that they need. And so there is more pressure and more challenge on us as small charities to support people, and it is difficult. It's a hard time, but I'm going to say we're here for the staying, and hopefully we can make a difference to families within kind of, well, certainly our areas, Glasgow North and North Lanarkshire, but we're not going anywhere. We're here to stay.
Excellent, and we would be saying the same thing. And it is about you can look out broadly and see this massive need and be overwhelmed by it, or you can look at it and you can think, well, I can't make a difference to all of this, but I can make a difference to this person that's in front of me. And actually, when you see what you're sowing into people's lives, you know, the difference that's actually making, not just to presumably to the adults you're supporting, but actually to the next generation that's coming through as well, because they're getting that fabulous start. So.
And you know what, you know, we talk about the difference we make to families and children, but we're actually really proud of the difference that we're making to communities, and also to the opportunities that we're creating for volunteers. I mean, the difference sometimes in somebody that comes through to volunteer where they're lacking confidence, and a couple of years down the line, the difference is absolutely unbelievable. So I guess, you know, as much as we're very proud of the work that we do with families and children and babies, we're equally as proud of, you know, what we're offering to volunteers and communities, upskilling people, giving people opportunity to give something back to their community. So it is a kind of, you know, a circle of hope.
Yeah, and I suppose that ties back into, you know, if folks are wanting to volunteer, this isn't necessarily all about filling a gap in the organisation. No. It's actually about what they can get from volunteering too. And so if folks want to do that, once again, we'll put the stuff into the notes at the bottom of the podcast, wherever folks are watching their podcasts or listening to their podcasts, we'll get that in there, and you can get in touch with Nikki and the team there and volunteer, which will be fabulous. Excellent. Thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you for having me.
Really, really informative, insightful, and an absolute pleasure. So thanks a lot for coming in.
And thank you for all the support that you give our charity.
Excellent. It is our pleasure. We are keen to have anybody else who would like to chat with us on our podcast. Like I said earlier on, if you want to do what Nikki's done here, if you've got something you want to talk about, whether or not you head up a charity or whether you're in business locally or less than locally, further afield than locally, or if you're somebody that's not doing any of that but actually you've got something to say about mental health and well-being, then we would love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us if you want to email us. You can email inquiries@healingfortheheart.co.uk, or you can follow some of the links that are in the bio wherever you're watching or listening to this. That'll take you to our website where you can get in touch with us there. But if you want to come and be people just like us and share your experience, then we would love to have you, and we'll see you on the next one.